Am I the asshole for leaving my partner at home because his OCD made me late to a dinner party at a restaurant? My partner, Alex, and I have been together for 5 years. He's kind, intelligent, and has a quirky sense of humor that I adore. However, over the past year, Alex's OCD has significantly worsened. It's not just a minor quirk anymore. It's a constant, all-consuming part of our lives. While I deeply care for him and want to be supportive, his refusal to seek help has started to strain our relationship. Alex has a routine of physical and mental checks he performs before leaving the house. He checks that the stove is off, even if we haven't used it that day, that all the windows and doors are locked, that no lights are left on unnecessarily, and, most frustratingly, that he remembers everything on his mental list. This list includes verifying random, inconsequential details, like ensuring he hasn't accidentally left a pen cap off somewhere. The process has become so meticulous that it often takes him up to an hour, or more, to feel satisfied enough to leave. I've gently suggested therapy numerous times, but Alex insists he can manage it on his own. He claims therapy won't work or that his OCD isn't bad enough to warrant professional help. I've even offered to go with him for support, but he always shuts down the conversation. It's heartbreaking to watch him struggle, but I also feel like I'm losing pieces of myself to his illness. 2 weeks ago, we were invited to a dinner party at a high-end restaurant. The host? My boss. This was no casual gathering. It was a celebration of my recent promotion, and attending was not optional. My boss is the type of person who notices everything, and I knew arriving late would make a poor impression. Fully aware of Alex's lengthy routine, I asked him to start getting ready 2 hours before we needed to leave. I even offered to help him with certain tasks, like laying out his clothes or double-checking the locks for him. At first, he seemed receptive, but as the time to leave approached, he became absorbed in his rituals. I tried to stay calm, reminding him gently that we needed to go soon. Unfortunately, my reminders only made him more anxious, and his checking intensified. By the time we were supposed to leave, Alex was still pacing the apartment, muttering to himself as he mentally reviewed his checklist. I couldn't interrupt him. If I did, he would have to start the entire process over. I watched the clock tick closer and closer to disaster, my anxiety rising like a tidal wave. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat, told him I was leaving, and walked out the door. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes late and blamed traffic when my coworkers asked. No one seemed to mind, and the evening went smoothly. My boss even complimented me on handling a question about our department's budget with poise. But as I sat there, sipping wine and laughing with colleagues, a small voice in the back of my mind kept nagging me. Was I wrong to leave Alex behind? When I got home, Alex was livid. He accused me of abandoning him and being unsupportive. I tried to explain how important the dinner was for my career and that I had done everything I could to help him prepare in advance. He wasn't having it. "You don't understand how hard this is for me," he shouted. "You're supposed to be my partner, not someone who leaves me behind when I'm struggling." I felt a pang of guilt. I knew he was struggling. I see it every day. But I couldn't shake the feeling that his refusal to seek help was dragging both of us down. I told him as much, which only escalated the argument. He accused me of being selfish, and I retaliated by pointing out that his OCD wasn't just his problem anymore. It was ours. By the end of the night, we were both too exhausted to continue fighting, so we went to bed in stony silence. The next morning, I tried to apologize, but Alex was still upset. He told me that if I truly loved him, I would have waited. I countered that love doesn't mean sacrificing my career for his unchecked illness. The conversation ended with him storming out of the apartment. It's been 2 weeks since the dinner party, and the tension between us hasn't eased. Alex avoids talking to me about anything beyond basic necessities, and I find myself walking on eggshells around him. I've tried to bring up therapy again, but he shuts me down every time. He's even started making snide comments about how I should just leave, if his OCD is such a burden. I don't want to leave him. I love Alex, and I know his OCD doesn't define who he is. But I also feel like I'm drowning in a sea of compromises, and he's not willing to throw me a lifeline. His refusal to get help feels like a rejection, not just of therapy, but of me and our future together. Last night, I reached out to a therapist on my own to get some guidance. The therapist was empathetic and validated my feelings of frustration and helplessness. She explained that while it's important to support Alex, I also need to set boundaries to protect my own mental health. She suggested I encourage him to attend therapy by framing it as a way to strengthen our relationship, rather than as a personal failure on his part. I haven't shared this conversation with Alex yet. I'm afraid he'll interpret it as an ultimatum or another attack on his character. At the same time, I know I can't keep going like this. I'm stuck in a cycle of guilt, resentment, and anxiety, and it's eating away at the love I have for him. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. Am I the asshole for leaving Alex at home that night? Was it selfish to prioritize my career over his mental health? Or was it an act of self-preservation in a situation that's been slowly unraveling for months? I don't know what the future holds for us. Maybe this is just a rough patch we'll eventually work through. Or maybe it's the beginning of the end. All I know is that I miss the version of Alex who used to laugh at my bad jokes and surprise me with coffee on lazy Sunday mornings. I want that Alex back, but I don't know if he's still in there, or if he even wants to come back. Edit. I realized I forgot to mention an important detail. During Alex's checks, I can't talk to him or offer assistance. If I do, he has to start the entire process over from the beginning. This makes it incredibly hard to help him without accidentally making things worse. Story 2. Am I the asshole for telling my dad's girlfriend the house she lives in is 0% hers and to expect nothing? It all started 5 years ago when I, 41, made the decision to help my dad, 69, and his longtime girlfriend, 73, by putting a significant down payment on a house. Using my 401k, I co-purchased a modest home for them, a place they could call their own during their twilight years. It wasn't just out of generosity, it was a practical move. My dad and his girlfriend were living on fixed incomes and barely scraping by, and I had worked my way into a comfortable financial position. Dad had always been a good father, and this felt like the right thing to do. However, things were never perfect. My dad's girlfriend, let's call her Jane, has always been a difficult person. She's perpetually negative, harboring unresolved childhood trauma that manifests in constant complaints and outbursts. While my dad is aging gracefully, Jane's health and personality seem to be deteriorating in tandem. Yet, despite her difficult nature, I continued to help. I figured that over time, perhaps she'd appreciate what I was doing for them. I couldn't have been more wrong. At the beginning of this year, I started to toy with the idea of selling their house and purchasing a large, multi-generational home. The plan wasn't just for me. It was to create a shared living space where I could better care for them as they aged. While the house we co-owned was sufficient, I thought combining resources could make life easier for all of us. When I floated the idea to my dad, he seemed receptive but warned me that Jane was freaking out. I shrugged it off at first, assuming she simply needed time to adjust to the idea. After all, I wasn't kicking them out or leaving them homeless. This was about improving our collective living situation. But then the phone call happened. One afternoon, Jane called me, seething with anger. Before I could even get a word in, she launched into a tirade. "How dare you even think about selling this house? I'm not going anywhere," she yelled. I was taken aback. I tried to explain that I wasn't selling the house to abandon them, but she wasn't listening. Instead, she doubled down, ranting about how much rent she had paid over the years and how she deserved something for her contributions. The kicker? She threatened to lawyer up. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always been upfront about the financial arrangement. She paid $400 a month in rent, which barely covered the basics. Meanwhile, I had been footing the water bill, buying them winter heating supplies, and even replacing their kitchen appliances a few years ago. And now she was accusing me of planning to kick them out and keep all the proceeds for myself? I was devastated, not just by her accusations, but by the sheer lack of gratitude. After the call, Jane tried to pretend it never happened. She didn't apologize or acknowledge her outburst. Instead, she acted like everything was fine, hoping to sweep the entire incident under the rug. But I couldn't let it go. For years, I had been more than generous, going above and beyond to ensure they were comfortable. Her reaction made me realize that I could never live under the same roof as her. The trust was broken, and there was no coming back from it. I gave it a month to see if she'd show any remorse. She didn't. So, I wrote her an email. In my email, I laid everything out clearly. I owed her nothing. That's not how rent works. Paying $400 a month did not entitle her to a share of the house or its proceeds. She had no say in whether the house was sold or not. I also advised her to reconcile with her estranged child. If my dad passed away first, she would need someone to support her because I would not be stepping into that role. I made it clear that she would not be welcome in my home or my life after this incident. To drive the point home, I informed her that I would no longer be paying the water bill. It was in her name anyway, and I had already gone above and beyond by recently buying my dad a truck and covering its insurance and maintenance costs. Jane didn't take the email well. She called me, attempting to rewrite history. I never said it would take $20,000 to make me go away, she insisted. My dad chimed in, trying to mediate, but Jane quickly shifted gears, blaming him for not giving her enough information about the situation. According to her, that was why she had flown off the handle. Her excuses didn't sit well with me. It doesn't matter, I told her firmly. Have a nice life. Since that conversation, I've cut ties with Jane. My relationship with my dad remains intact, but things are undeniably strained. He's caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace, but I refuse to compromise my boundaries. Looking back, I don't regret helping my dad. He's always been a good father, and I wanted to ensure he had a safe and stable place to live. But Jane's behavior has been a painful reminder that no amount of generosity can change someone's character. I know some might think I'm harsh for cutting her off so completely, but at the end of the day, I have to protect my own well-being. And after everything that's happened, I'm confident in my decision. Was I the asshole for telling Jane the house she lives in is 0% hers and to expect nothing? Some might say yes, that I could have handled things more delicately or been more understanding of her fears. But here's the thing. I never gave her any reason to doubt my intentions. I've always been clear and upfront, and her reaction was fueled by paranoia and entitlement, not logic. In the end, I think the real issue was a lack of trust. Jane never trusted that I had their best interests at heart, despite all the evidence to the contrary. And without trust, there's no foundation for a healthy relationship. So, no, I don't think I'm the asshole. I think I'm someone who drew a line when their kindness was taken for granted. And I stand by that decision.